Good afternoon, at least from the East Coast where I am, to everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're going to give folks a few minutes to get into the session, and then we'll kick things off. So we'll get started in just a moment. Welcome, everyone. We're a little bit after noon, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today. I'll introduce myself. My name is Richard Sebastian. I am the Director of Open and Digital Learning at Achieving the Dream, and have worked on the project that we'll talk a little bit about today, which is called the Every Learner Everywhere. Today's focus for this webinar, and it's really the first in a four-part webinar series, is focused on adaptive learning, and it's focused on using adaptive courseware programs in our case in the community college setting. And so we're really excited to be able to share a little bit about our work with this project that's been going on about a year and a half now. We're really especially thrilled that we're going to hear directly from the folks on the ground at the colleges who've been doing this work and have been putting in the kind of the effort to get it running. And they're going to share today the things that they've learned with their programs at the two colleges we'll be talking with today. So if you could, when you come in, you should see the chat box on your Zoom screen, if you're not familiar. And let me, so on the right-hand side, you see a chat box. And if you could introduce yourself, we'd love to hear where you're from. Maybe include kind of your role if you're at an institution or an organization, throw that in there as well. And you know what you want to do is choose all panelists and attendees when you post your chat, and that way everyone will be able to see that your introduction. So a little other housekeeping bits before we get started. This is being recorded, and we will share out a link to the recording and the slides. You should get a follow-up email either tomorrow or Friday with those links. And so if you want to share them with your colleagues or review them yourself, you're welcome to do that. If you're new to Zoom or kind of video conferencing, on the screen, you should see kind of some of the layout. You're not going to have access to audio and video today since there are so many people joining us, but you can communicate with us through the chat box. So we'll be kind of monitoring that today. So, besides introducing yourself, if you have any questions along the way, if something occurs to you, please post it in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. And we'll be we'll have a Q&A session. Hopefully we'll leave enough time for that at the end of today's session to answer some of those questions while we have the panelists with us. So thank you for the introductions, and thank you to everyone for coming and joining us today. We'll have a little bit of news about the future webinars and webinar dates. Again, as I said at the top, this is the first of a 4 webinar series on adaptive learning. So if you want to sign up for the upcoming webinars, we'll have those dates for you later as well. So with this series today, the moderators today, again, I introduced myself. I'm the Director of Open and Digital Learning at Achieving the Dream. We'll also be hearing from Nate Angell. He's been a coach with the Every Learner Everywhere project at ATD. He's been working with colleges. There he is. He's waving to you. So he's going to be talking today to our panelists and getting some insights about their programs. We also, Ruanda Garth-McCullough, Dr. Garth-McCullough is our Associate Director of Teaching and Learning, and she's actually been leading the Every Learner Everywhere project for ATD. And hopefully if she can get in, she's having a little trouble getting into the webinar. She's going to talk a little bit about that project and give you some more details. And then we're also going to hear from our CEO, Dr. Karen Stout. And so while Ruanda is trying to join us, I'm going to actually go ahead and ask Karen if she wouldn't mind jumping on and giving us a few remarks today.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. It's great to be here to learn with you, and it's great to see so many names that I recognize in the chat. It's wonderful to welcome a number of our Achieving the Dream coaches, as well as I see faculty from all over the country, and I know many of you have participated in Achieving the Dream teaching and learning events when we were able to do those events face-to-face, but I recognize a number of names from the series we did in the spring in the midst of moving online during COVID. So thank you so much for being here. And I do recognize that we have an international participant from Nepal. Welcome to this webinar. You know, Achieving the Dream works with about 280 colleges, community colleges throughout the country in building the capacity to have strong and equitable student success outcomes that lead to economic and social mobility for students, but that also strengthen the communities within which community colleges are key members. And one way that ATD supports our network colleges is through the work we do around teaching and learning. Many of you may remember ATD as a leader in building data-informed decision-making capacity across our network colleges, and that's still a hallmark of the work that we do. But we realize that many years into the student success movement, we've potentially left faculty behind and left teaching and learning behind. And indeed, faculty are really the key scalers of this work. Faculty touch every one of the students that come through our community colleges. Our teaching and learning work is focused on 4 cornerstones. And these 4 cornerstones of excellence, as articulated in this slide, really anchor our theory of change inside ATD and the work that we are doing now with many of our colleges that are going deep in building a teaching and learning culture of excellence. So I like to talk about some of this next work ahead of us around student success, moving from data-informed excellence to really focusing on what does teaching and learning excellence and a culture of teaching and learning excellence look like. And these 4 cornerstones anchor that culture. A couple of things in the slides in front of you, I don't want to read the slide to you, but I think it's really important that we believe that full-time and adjunct faculty are very important in this work, and many of our colleges have left adjunct faculty behind. And so Achieving the Dream is really working with our colleges to build that inclusive culture. We also see in change initiatives that sometimes the work of the faculty is not well linked with the work of the student affairs professionals on their campuses. So building shared efforts and collaborative partnerships that link faculty and student affairs professionals together is very important to building not just a student success culture, but a culture of teaching and learning excellence. Educators joining students as active learners, also one of the key principles. And then finally, that the institution embraces professional learning. And I think through COVID, we've learned that the institutional investments in teaching and learning need to look much different post-COVID for us to make sure that there's strong learner continuity that leads to student success. And certainly the work around adaptive courseware and digital learning fits into this work. Throughout this webinar series, you're going to hear directly from the faculty and staff at the 7 Every Learner Everywhere community colleges that ATD has been supporting and helping them through their journey in learning about adaptive courseware and the power of adaptive courseware. And through this work, Achieving the Dream is learning too. This work on digital learning is being led by Ruanda and particularly connects with the first cornerstone on using evidence-based instructional practices, and you'll get to meet her shortly. I should add that the Every Learner Everywhere network is one of 3 solution networks funded by the Gates Foundation that Achieving the Dream is part of. We are also part of the NASPA Solution Hub, which is driving reform in student advising. And that connects with Achieving the Dream's work around holistic student supports. And then we're also a member of the Strong Start to Finish Solution Hub, which supports bringing equity to education by sharing actionable evidence-based policy and practice about students' initial year of college. And that begins fundamentally with working through developmental course reform and really working on gateway college course completion in that first year, getting students off to the right start. So with that, I'm going to hand it back off to Richard, and I'm going to listen in, and I can't wait to hear from our colleagues from Indian River State College and Cuyahoga Community College. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Really appreciate it. Ruanda is here, and so I'm going to actually throw it back to her so she can tell you a little bit about the Every Learner Everywhere project and her work on that, and just kind of give you a brief overview of that work. Ruanda?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you, Karen, for those opening remarks. I'm Dr. Ruanda Garth-McCullough, and I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to share a little about the Every Learner Everywhere network that ATD Teaching and Learning Team has had the pleasure to work with over the past 2 years. As you can see on the slide, the Every Learner network includes 12 very vibrant and robust partner organizations funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with the shared mission to work with colleges to improve student outcomes and address equity gaps for first generation, low income, and students of color. The network partners are working together to support the use of best practices with digital learning technology to improve teaching and learning in the classroom. The first phase of our initiative focused on adaptive learning, and we supported 7 Lighthouse Institutions to integrate adaptive courseware in their gateway courses. And just a little preview, some of you may know, but some of you may not. The way that we define adaptive courseware is as a digital teaching and learning tool that provides personalized instruction based on students' responses. So the software adjusts the level of difficulty and the amount of questions students complete based on how they respond. And at its best, adaptive software operates like a personalized learning path through the content within each course. So if you can go to the next slide. And then the next slide, we have 7 institutions that in our first cohort, which we refer to as Lighthouse Institutions. And on the next slide, you'll be able to see that there are, we have 3 institutions in Florida, 2 of our network colleges in Ohio, and 2 in Texas. And ATD has provided technical assistance to our network colleges, and our partner APLU provides technical assistance to the 4-year institutions. So if you can go to the next slide, you'll be able to see which colleges we've been working with. And we have been honored to work with our network colleges as they have convened cross-functional teams of full-time and adjunct faculty that have worked on all of the cornerstones that Karen just previewed. The teams consist of full-time and adjunct faculty, faculty developers, instructional designers, institutional researchers, and student affairs personnel. And they've worked to realign key courses to offer the personalized learning experiences for students in ways that allow students to work at their own pace and access just-in-time academic supports. So our institutions have found that the courseware saves students money and impacts instructors' ability to structure class time to meet best meet the needs of their learners, and really enables faculty to use the data, the learning analytics data, to meet students where they are and take them where we know they can go by centering equity in the classroom. So with that, I'll throw it back to Richard, and we'll get you get to hear from our panelists. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you, Ruanda. Thank you, Karen. Let's move on now to the exciting part of today's session, where we're going to actually hear from the colleges. I'm going to introduce Nate Angell now, and he's going to turn on his camera. And Nate has been doing coaching with the colleges, the Lighthouse colleges that we've been working with for this, and so he's gotten to know a lot of the folks who've been working on their adaptive learning projects. And so he's going to introduce our panelists for today, and they're going to do a bit of back and forth discussion about their experiences and perspectives on their adaptive learning project. So Nate, you there, and take it away.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Rhonda and Karen, for all that background information. It really sets us up well for the discussion today. And one of the first things I want to do is just recognize what a special and challenging time we're in right now. And I wanted to start things off by inviting our panelists to kind of just let us know how things are going for them and their schools during this moment. And I thought I'd start out with Kara DePaul, the program manager of academic professional development at Cuyahoga Community College. And I'll just admit right there that I may be mispronouncing Cuyahoga. I'm not sure how it's pronounced when it's in combination with the college's name. I know you guys call it Tri-Cs. So Kara, would you come on and just give us a little bit of an idea of A, how to correctly pronounce your school name, and B, how things are going for you in this difficult time?
Sure, Nate. So you are pronouncing it correct. So Cuyahoga Community College, so you're good. We also go by Tri-C a lot. So if it's easier, you can refer to us as Tri-C. So the question as to how are things going right now, you know, I'm sure like everyone on the call, our institution is facing some pretty interesting challenges and opportunities right now. You know, our faculty are working around the clock, as is our staff in academic affairs and student affairs, to modify all of our services, to put all of their classes online. You know, personally, from a faculty development standpoint and departmental standpoint, you know, we're working really hard to put some systems and some different training and development in place to help faculty with this transition. And, you know, without knowing how what the future is going to hold, we are trying our best to kind of take things as they come to us, but then also plan ahead for the future, knowing that, you know, this situation could be around for a while. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm imagining that things may be somewhat similar at Indian River, and I thought I'd ask Lynn Odell, who's the Mathematics and Science Student Success Coordinator there at Indian River, to chime in on how she's doing and how things are happening there at Indian River during the pandemic.
Probably pretty much the same. I think I'm receiving more outreach from students concerned about that they really prefer the face-to-face classes in math, and their apprehension about taking a math class online and not receiving that one-on-one instruction. Our faculty are doing absolutely everything that they can. We have synchronous sections of online courses where they're holding lecture virtually. They're holding additional office hours for students. And then also just being that ear for faculty when they get a little frustrated with how things are going. We constantly are communicating and reaching out to one another to make sure everybody's doing well, and if there's anything that they need.
Well, I hope that this little webinar can serve as a reach across all the different states and countries that are here to check in with each other to make sure we're all okay and give each other a little boost in this time. You know, one thing that I learned in talking with you all before was some of the motivations for why to get started down this path with adaptive learning and the Every Learner Everywhere program. And I'm wondering if I could invite Anthony to talk a little bit about how Indian River got involved with this project, and then why it was motivated to work on it and kind of bite it off as a project. Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. So we have a history here at the college of taking on some initiatives that come our way. As part of our recent accreditation, the college took on a quality enhancement plan, which was really centered around math and math success for our students in our gateway and entry-level math courses. And Lynn was a big part of that as a manager for that project. It was really an active research project where we were really trying to improve the course success rates and student outcomes as they were coming in, taking these entry-level math courses. In the state of Florida, the legislature, we have a Senate Bill 1720, which everybody in Florida knows about, which really did quite a bit on our developmental education area. And students were now coming straight into our college level classes, and many of them still needed some support. And so part of our the research project that was going on in these math courses was making sure that we're able to offer courses in a variety of delivery modes. We were introducing flipped and hybrid, and we were trying to make sure we were supporting students with computer lab access when they needed it, where they could get peer tutors or course embedded learning assistants. So we're doing everything we could to really try to provide that support that students needed as they're going through these math courses. And so when this project came along, our vice president really is the one that kind of brought us into the loop on it, that it was an opportunity. And, you know, I didn't really have to even say much about it before the math folks were just jumping onto it.
Thank you, Anthony. And Anthony is the Assistant Dean of Mathematics and Natural Sciences there at Indian River. And I'm wondering, Dwayne, if the situation was similar at Tri-Cs, or did you get inspired and connected to the ELE program in a different way?
It's interesting. I think I'm going to be able to talk through this part, but this is actually the portion of our discussion that Kara normally does, because Kara works in the office where this originated. Her former boss, who is now our Vice President of Academic Affairs, was the one that wrote the application to go in search of joining this effort. So Kara was more closely aligned to that part of the process, but working primarily with faculty and students, I can tell you that where we sort of picked up was after the initial outreach to faculty to kind of gauge what level of interest there might be in undertaking participation in the grant. Some time passed, and then when it was awarded and it was time to kind of put things in motion, Kara and I stepped in to kind of talk about how we were going to engage faculty again in what had been kind of an abstract conversation. Should we apply for this grant? What level of interest would you have? That was about the extent of the conversation prior to being awarded. So when we were presented with the opportunity, Kara and I picked up with reaching back out to faculty, some of whom had responded to the initial conversations, and others who we were just kind of contacting because we knew there was some level of interest based on other conversations and other projects with them. And then eventually those calls went college-wide. And everything that Tri-C did was driven by providing faculty the resources that they needed to make use of this opportunity. And so once the call was out there, Kara and I just tried to knock down obstacles where they arose. And other than that, stay out of the way, providing faculty the resources that they needed to make use of the opportunity.
Sounds great. And so maybe Kara, to give you a chance to follow up on what Dwayne said there, can you give us an idea of what disciplines and courses you moved to adaptive at Tri-C, and how it was that you found getting faculty engaged. I mean, Dwayne spoke to that a little bit, but did you find it difficult to get faculty engaged in it, or was there a pathway or certain processes or activities that you used to get folks involved in those different programs?
Sure. So as Dwayne mentioned, we did put a call out, a college-wide call out to all of our full-time faculty, and just kind of asking, hey, who's already using this? Who's interested in implementing this in their course this year? And from the results from that call, we decided to form a faculty learning community with those faculty members that were involved. And so we did have pretty strong turnout. We had 16 faculty for fall semester. Well, I should back up, is we kind of assembled that group in a spring semester. So we had about 16 that were interested, and we had a wide range of disciplines. We had BADM, business administration, psychology, mathematics, chemistry, physics, and biology. And we had a couple of faculty from each of those disciplines. So they may have been, some of them had worked together closely in the past, but some of them were from across different campuses and everything. So it was kind of a unique way to bring everybody together. So in terms of engagement with the faculty, no, I don't think we had any it wasn't hard for us to engage with them aside from scheduling, right? With our faculty learning community, we wanted to meet regularly with them in a way to kind of keep in connection and to hear what was going on with their implementation process. So in an effort to kind of keep all of that together and give them the support that they need, we also enlisted the help of our Centers for Teaching and Learning Excellence. We called them the CLEs at Tri-C. So we had CLE, instructional designers and technologists that were paired with the faculty by discipline, right? So we had all the psychology faculty, they had an assigned person that could, instructional designer and technologist that could help them research what programs might be available for them, what courseware they could use, how to build it and incorporate it into their course, any of the technical issues that kind of came up in terms of syncing all the different technologies. So that I think really helped keep faculty engaged along the way. Them on an island all by themselves trying to figure out how adaptive courseware works and how they can use it in their class. They had a whole team of people helping them along the way.
I'm going to jump in for just
go for
30 seconds if I can, and then I'll go back out. So two other things that I think worked in our favor. Very early, we met the first time with our ELE support folks from ATD and other partner groups in May of 2019. And very early on, we had one or two faculty that we knew had some sway and some influence either with others or were very knowledgeable in this type of work because they had already done some work on their own. And we invited a few of those folks to come to that first meeting with Ruanda and the rest of the team. And Ruanda tells the story sometimes that when she walked in, Kara and I told her, you've got one or two people here in particular that are here today. And if they like what they hear, they might be back tomorrow. They were looking for confirmation that what they were being asked to participate in was not a administration-driven effort, that it was going to be faculty-led, and that our partners outside of the college understood that and got it too. And so Kara and I were absolutely the conduits through which all of those support opportunities flowed from all of our partners, but they all went directly to the faculty.
Makes sense, and it reminds me of something in talking with Indian River folks a little bit of a similar situation. So Lynn, if I'm not mistaken, you guys focus mostly on math and chemistry at Indian River, and maybe with some experiments in some other disciplines. So if you could speak a little bit to the disciplines that you moved adaptive into at Indian River, but also this idea of how faculty got engaged and how important that was. I think at Indian River that was a similar situation, was it not?
Yes, absolutely. As Anthony mentioned we had just finished our quality enhancement plan, which dealt with redesigning our introductory math courses. And so the math folks really had gotten into the habit of collecting data, meeting regularly, reevaluating the course content, the curriculum, receiving feedback from our students, because we continuously held student focus groups with our students, and taking all of that feedback and making changes. So really when the Every Learner Everywhere grant started, the math folks were kind of looking like, okay, what can we do next? So this really fit perfectly for the math department because they were already in that mindset of changing. And so we initially started with our 2 introductory courses, our intermediate algebra and our quantitative reasoning. And then it's emerged into now we're trying it in our college algebra. We have 1 faculty member that is also trying it in business calculus, the adaptive features, because they felt like those are student populations that it would really benefit. On the chemistry side, the department chair was all involved and yes, let's try this, let's do something, we need to make some changes. It initially started with her. And then now this fall, it's now the entire department. All of those intro chemistry courses are using the adaptive software. So it was adopted by the entire department. Our English folks, it was our English Comp 1. They had a little more difficult time trying to zero in on what adaptive software that they could use that would work for our students, but they piloted a couple of sections this summer and now have implemented the adaptive software for the entire department for the ENC 1101 or English Comp 1. So as far as faculty buy-in, on the math side, like I said, they really just wanted something else that they could just grasp onto to continue the momentum that we had already started within the math department. And I think them sharing with other departments, it's kind of become a little contagious in some areas as the math faculty start to talk about the things that they've been able to accomplish, the changes that they've been able to make, and the freedom that they've been given from our administration to go ahead and try new and innovative things. That I think on the chemistry side, that was one of the reasons why I think it's now a department. Anthony might be able to chime in a little bit more than I can on the chemistry side, but I think it's just that enthusiasm of trying something new and seeing that it's working for our students has helped tremendously.
Yeah, and just a quick follow-up, Lynn, someone just asked in chat which adaptive software you were using in math, and I think it was Alex, right?
In quantitative reasoning, we're using Alex. In intermediate algebra and college algebra, it is Pearson. And Pearson, like I'd say probably the fall before the Every Learner Everywhere grant started, we brought them in to go ahead and do a presentation for us on what changes Pearson had implemented. And they did a whole presentation on all the adaptive features that were within MyLab Math. And so the faculty really got excited about trying to, oh, we need to try this. Can we do this next? And then Every Learner Everywhere came about. And it was like, yay, we get to go ahead and try all this and see how it works. So yeah, it's been great. And then Alex for our quantitative reasoning, really, that's for our liberal arts track students and helping them remediate those skills within Alex. And the way it's set up has been, the feedback from the students has been tremendous. They really, really like it a lot.
Yeah, and I just want to let the audience know that as we continue this webinar series, we'll be delving in a little bit more deeply into the kind of instructional design and the faculty experience. We're kicking off this first webinar with this kind of high-level view from the folks who made it happen at their schools. And so tune in more for more details about kind of how adaptive works in specific disciplines as the webinar series goes forward. You know, Anthony, I'm wondering a little bit, we spoke before about the kind of results that you saw with adaptive at Indian River. And I'm curious, after having, had it under your belts for a year or so now, where do you see adaptive at Indian River headed next? And what would you like to do with it next? What are the sort of like, when you look back on this past year, what have you really identified as the important takeaways from what's happened, and where do you want to take those next?
Yeah, what's really nice about the adaptive feature for a lot of this courseware is that it allows, if a student is weak in a certain topic, it allows the software will automatically divert the student back through more exercises, more examples, more problems to help strengthen that particular area. For a student who's coming through and is already strong in a certain concept, they're just going to move right along to the next topic. But for a student who's a little bit weaker and needs a little bit more, that's what's nice about this feature. And so if you're looking at trying to move this out into other disciplines and other courses, Lynn kind of touched on this. We started out doing it in our lowest level math courses, and then quickly the faculty started realizing, you know what, this will work really well further up the chain. So moving it up into college algebra, moving it up into our business calculus sequence now. In chemistry, we're doing it for our introductory chemistry courses. But what's nice about it is it's a feature that you could use in the upper level general, inorganic, and organic chemistry courses as well. And I've even gotten some questions from some of the other deans about, hey, is this something we can use in our business area? I'm kind of interested to hear what Tri-C's doing over there. So the adaptive feature, I saw somebody in the chat box say, are faculty scared that this is going to replace them? Not at all, because what it really is doing is it's helping reinforcing, and it's allowing the student to go through with the software, with the courseware, to get reinforcement in those areas that are weak, that the faculty may not be able to spend that one-on-one time with them in the classroom to really strengthen. So it really is a very complementary system working with the faculty.
And that makes sense based on what you were saying before, but I also, I was really struck by something that you said when we were talking before about, it seemed like you really walked away from your first experience with adaptive feeling like some really powerful things had happened on your campus.
Yeah,
and you spoke very eloquently about that.
Yeah, one of the things that really struck when we started seeing some of the data, after you step back after the semester's over and you start looking at the data, and Julie, who was working, Julie Niesler, who was working up some of our data that we had submitted, she came back and showed us how the equity gaps in some of these entry-level math courses were significantly smaller than, and something that we had not really realized just looking at our raw data, but once we saw the sections that were implementing the adaptive feature versus the sections that were not, we could see a substantial difference there. And that was really striking. Anything you can do to reduce achievement gaps or learning gaps within any populations is very significant. And so that was something that really was quite remarkable for us.
And can I just say something?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Lynn, please.
To just piggyback on what Anthony said, another thing that our faculty noticed, especially in math, is the content retention from one topic to the next in our Every Learner Everywhere sections was much better in sections that we did not use the adaptive feature, especially on in our quantitative reasoning course, which is our liberal arts track course for students. The faculty noticed that they were retaining more information than previously, which is huge, because a lot of times students will just cram and study for the test and then forget. And so then they get to the next topic and then they have to, remediate and relearn all that again. And that adaptive feature was eliminating that. They were retaining the material, which is huge.
Yeah, and I think that might go to answer one of the questions that Rajesh put into the chat a little bit that we might get to later. I'm kind of wondering, based on what Anthony was saying about the experience there at Indian River, Dwayne, and you might want to hand this to Kara, I don't know, but did you feel like you had similar kinds of outcomes from your experience at Tri-C?
I think we'll probably tag team this one a little bit. Anecdotally, we thought that in most instances we were getting very positive feedback from the faculty, and our feedback mechanism early on was primarily through the faculty. We reached out to some student focus groups and things later on, but the results were promising, we thought. There's a learning curve for the faculty using this, just like for the students, to be sure. We had, as Kara noted, we had 16 faculty in 13 different courses in our first kind of go with this last fall. Some of those were winners and some of them were losers in terms of the product. You know, a couple faculty took some stabs with some things that just didn't work out. But by and large, they did. And by spring, they had made changes where necessary and were moving forward. Our analysis of the fall data, which because of the COVID change in teaching modality in the spring, got kind of circumvented. But our analysis of the fall data showed some positives. It did not show, I think, the degree of statistical significance that we were expecting or hoping for, not expecting, that's the wrong word, because our friends at Digital Promise, Julie Neisler and others were prompting us to not get overly enthusiastic about what the numbers would show. The directionality of the moves was in the direction we thought it would be just about everywhere. It was not statistically significant right out of the gate to the degree that we thought it would be in most of our disciplines. But part of that is because the ends are so small. We had disciplines where only one class was using the software. So even if there was movement, you know, the numbers were too small to kind of make any generalizable claims. So Kara, what did I forget there?
No, I think the data that Dwayne shared is absolutely, you know, correct. And I think one of the things that, as I've heard Anthony and Lynn discussing, one of the things that we noticed happening was that, you know, maybe right now the data doesn't show like statistical impact on all of the courses, but what's happening is like we have a few, as Dwayne mentioned, faculty champions. So we have Stacy Souther, who's in our psychology department, and Dr. Michelle Hampton, who's our business and econ faculty member that was involved. And they really took this lead and initiative of getting out to their colleagues, their full-time faculty counterparts, and getting buy-in from across the campuses. We're a multi-campus institution, and it's, you know, there's different layers and levels of complexity, I think, you know, with that. But in addition to the full-time faculty, they got a couple of their colleagues on board, and then they started scaling up and including adjuncts into the mix. So they would share with them like a fully designed and built out course, and it really started to kind of, I guess, like gain enthusiasm and gain buy-in from faculty along the way. So just this semester, this fall semester, we have now, boy, Dwayne, I don't know if I have this totally right, but I believe there are like 13 BADM faculty that are using the McGraw-Hill Connect software now, myself included as an adjunct, and that has kind of moved across campuses now. So we're seeing faculty come together and explore these products in more detail, or maybe they're thinking more broadly of, you know, it worked for BADM 1020. What else could this work in? What could this work in econ? Could this work in some of our other business classes? Same thing with our chemistry folks and our bio folks as well.
That's really interesting that you guys have had so many disciplines participate. It's really remarkable, the breadth at your school. We're getting up closer to when we want to shift to Q&A, but I want to leave folks. Hopefully, y'all have some words of wisdom that you can help folks who are thinking about this as they consider adopting adaptive at their own schools. And so I'm wondering, Lynn, if you have any advice now that you've been doing this for a while, if you have like a couple of takeaways that you would really like other people to know who might be embarking on this kind of project for the first time. I know you've given me a couple before. What advice do you have for folks who are looking at adaptive now?
I think start with including your faculty that are the most eager to try something new. You get their buy-in and they start talking to other faculty and saying what great outcomes that they're having, and they're sharing, and before you know it, you're going to have everybody on board. You're going to have to start turning people away because you'll have too many. That's what we have found. Also, do not forget that student voice whenever you're doing anything like this. like Dwayne was saying, and Cara, the numbers are so small sometimes when you first start out that you cannot gauge from the data that you're collecting whether or not something is working. But if you sit down and talk to the students and get their voice and find out from them, you will know if something's working or if it's not working. So don't forget to get that student voice and get them involved. That's why we're here. And if something that we're doing and implementing is not working for them, then we're only hindering them. We're hindering their success. So definitely get that student voice. So that would be my two big takeaways. Get the faculty that are your most engaged in trying something new to start out, and listen to that student voice.
That's right. It all comes back to the faculty and students in the end, doesn't it? You know, Anthony, did you want to have a final word on advice to your counterparts?
Well, I'm afraid to make my fellow deans on the call jealous. I mean, because we started asking for some faculty who'd be interested. We had a workshop last May, like Dwayne was talking about, and you know, folks were just stepping right up, and there was no arm twisting needed or anything like that. I like the term faculty champion that Cara was using, because that's really who's going to drive these type of initiatives forward. And then, like Lynn was saying, you know, we use focus groups to get a lot of our student feedback, and I think that the data, you know, it's qualitative data, but it's still very good data. You're getting that response from the students. You're getting to hear from the student perspective. How are they taking in this type of approach? How's it working for them? So, just echoing what they said.
Yeah, and I see Karen also echoed that, the importance of centering the student voice in the chat too. It's in some of these experiences. Well, Dwayne, are you jealous of Anthony's situation, or do you feel like you have a similarly positive one?
I'm thrilled to hear it. I won't say jealous, because Kara and I had a good problem to solve initially. You know, we knew what the funding was available to support the effort, and we were both in a position that we had a little bit of funding from our own budgets that we were able to use for things like the costs of doing business at some of these things. You know, we didn't use a nickel of the money that came with this grant to put out coffee and cookies at meetings and those kinds of things. We were able to kind of float that stuff so that we were able to tell everybody involved that every bit of funding that was available to support the work of the faculty went to support the work of the faculty. And when it came down to it, our partners stepped up to help us fill a couple of gaps where we found them. And I think we went about $300 over. I mean, it was that to that degree. We were looking to spend every single penny, and we had more faculty at some points than we thought we might be able to fund. And the more we reconfigured and played with the numbers and talked about alternative ways to do things, we made it happen. And that was all because the faculty were making us work hard to figure out ways to support it. So yeah, we were pretty fortunate as well.
Sounds like good fortune all around. Well, Kara, I'm going to give you the chance to give the last word in here before we move to Q&A. Do you have any advice for folks out there?
Sure. I definitely echo Lynn and Anthony's comments. Get your faculty buy-in. Let faculty lead the process and drive it and explore the different software that's available. But don't leave them out there on their own. Put a co-pilot in the seat and some backseat drivers and help them. Have your instructional designers and technologists, or people, maybe it's your ITS department. Every college is structured a little bit differently, but make sure you have those support systems in place for faculty to really take the idea and to launch it and make it happen. Student voice is so important, whether you're looking at just the raw data or you're listening to some of the anecdotal stories that you're hearing from the faculty or from these focus groups. Because you are absolutely right, Lynn. They will tell you exactly how it is. And then the other piece of advice that I could say is, from a grant management perspective, right? There's all the the budget and the reporting and all the things kind of behind the scenes that Dwayne and I kind of took care of, so that load and that burden was not on our faculty, right? so having that in place, I think, kind of helped free them up so they didn't have to think about all of those aspects of it. And so, you know, having a cross-functional team at your college, so thinking about the people and the players that might be involved, you know, when you are bringing in new textbooks and new courseware, there might be some issues with like your bookstore or, you know, with your ITS department. So getting those folks together and kind of all on the same page so that they're aware of the process is definitely helpful. And to be honest, I don't think that we absolutely could not have done this, obviously, without ATD and Ruanda and all of those team members that would come to our site visits. I mean, they kept us together and they kept us focused and kind of looking at things from all sorts of different angles. So definitely rely on all those network partners of ATD and ELE.
Well, that was a great plug for ATD's work on this. Thank you for that, Kara. So I know that there have been a few questions answered in chat, and I know some of them have been specifically about the details of how adaptive learning is actually moved into courses. We don't actually have enough time in this webinar to address that, but Richard's put in links to all the upcoming webinars. We'll be delving more deeply into kind of how the nuts and bolts of how adaptive actually worked in particular courses and disciplines. So I invite you to come to all of those. So before we go away, if our panelists still have a few minutes, Richard, did you have a particular question that you pulled out that you wanted folks to address?
I think, you know, you guys did a good job answering them. I think Dwayne posted a question to Lynn that I don't recall if she talked about, but you know, at Indian River, I know that the search for adaptive courseware for English, the English program was pretty challenging, and I think he had some questions about that. So I don't know if Lynn could address that.
I think, sorry, Lynn, let me interrupt. I think Dwayne also posted a resource to follow up on too, right? In the chat. Maybe you didn't see it.
I missed that one. Sorry.
Go ahead, Lynn. Sorry.
That's okay. Yes, they had a hard time trying to find software that they felt would meet the needs of our students. And so it took them a little longer to get going, but I think they're going in the right direction now. I think they seem pretty happy with what they've chosen and what they're implementing. So the semester just started, so I haven't received much feedback as of yet, but I'll be reaching out to them and seeing how it's going.
Great, thank you.
There was this other question too, Richard, about how to engage with faculty who are perhaps frightened of or concerned about the idea that adaptive learning might replace them as teachers. I don't know if anyone has a
Anthony had a great response to that, but anybody else want to comment on having to deal with or address faculty that saw this as more of a threat to them, and how'd you navigate that?
I'll share a couple of quick thoughts. I don't think I heard from any faculty members who expressed viewing it as a threat. There were faculty members that are not particularly interested in some cases in things that they don't know, not looking for change, looking for kind of tried and true, and that wasn't our audience in this. You know, we're looking for early adopters and folks that were interested in kind of doing something different. I will say that given what we and just about every other institution in the country went through in the middle of spring semester, those faculty who were implementing an adaptive courseware product in a face-to-face on-ground class that they would not have normally been using. They would have been using a textbook and sharing PowerPoints on Blackboard. But those faculty who were doing the adaptive courseware to a person reported that it made that transition so much simpler, because students who gravitate to online already come in with some expectation about what that's going to be. And face-to-face students oftentimes don't have that expectation. And so when we kicked everybody off campus and said, go home and log on, those students who had been using an adaptive product for 7 or 8 weeks prior to that point were able to just keep going without missing a beat. So there were certainly advantages that faculty that had made that move were able to share with their counterparts and kind of put out there as a benefit to kind of broadening your horizons a little bit, because all of our faculty, the folks that were upset when we took the overhead projectors and the chalkboards out of the, years ago, those folks were having to make the same transition to remote instruction that everybody else was. So this was a boon to the folks that were a step ahead.
Anybody else want to?
Yeah, I'll just, I think Anthony mentioned it. What we found, especially on the math side, is the adaptive software really is a partner to the instructor, because sometimes you really do not know the level of understanding a student has as you're walking around the room lecturing, or the student that never raises their hand. The adaptive features in the software catches those pre-skills, those things that students need to remediate on, that you really cannot in general tell in a face-to-face class when you're lecturing and not one-on-one with a student. So as far as math goes, it's really a companion. It's that additional support for the math faculty, because it's catching some of those things that they can't see that the student is lacking the skills. So I have not heard from any of our faculty that they feel like they are being replaced. Not at all. They're actually encouraged at the fact that they have that support for the students to catch some of those things that they really can't catch. Or the students not speaking up and saying, I don't understand this, that software, that adaptive feature catches those things. So, and it's making the students aware too, also, some things that they may not have realized that they didn't understand. So it's, bringing awareness to the students that are using it.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Can't say that enough. We have some other questions that some people are fielding in here, but unfortunately I want to kind of wrap up now and talk a little bit about the upcoming webinars. I posted the links in the chat for the upcoming webinars. The next one is on September 30th. It's focused on pedagogy and practice, so kind of classroom practice around adaptive learning. About 3 weeks later, we have another webinar, as Nate mentioned earlier, kind of focusing on kind of discipline areas. So adaptive learning in math courses. Some of you had posted questions about specific disciplines, including math. So that might be a good one to tune into to find out more about how adaptive learning fit into these courses, how it was used, and what the outcomes were. And then we're gonna have one more in November on the 18th on science courses. So math and science courses are the two topics that we will cover, like kind of discipline areas with adaptive learning. So you'll get these slides with the recording and the follow-up email. I also posted them in the chat. If you want to go ahead and register for them, they're free, and you can register now. If you want to join us for those, I hope you can. I would like to take a moment to thank our panelists today. We really appreciate you guys, Kara, Dwayne, Lynn, and Anthony, for taking the time out of your day. I know it's a busy time of year, and it's a crazy time of year. There's lots of reasons that you wouldn't have time to do this, but you made the time, and we really appreciate you sharing what you learned. And I think it's been really, really valuable. So thank you for that. And also thank you to Nate for moderating this and for his work with our colleges, and we appreciate your work, Nate. One more thing I would like to do is to provide you with a link to a survey. This is a survey that ELE would like to know kind of more about you and how you felt about today's session and what you got out of it. So I'll post the link in the chat as well. So if you can take a moment, and it's not too long, and go ahead and complete that, that would be really helpful to inform us about any other topics you're interested in, and ways that we can kind of come up with other webinars and supports around adaptive learning that you're interested in. So thanks for that. And also want to thank Ruanda and Karen also for being here today. you guys, thanks for coming today. Have a great rest of your day. And hopefully you'll join us in upcoming webinars later in the month in October and November. So take care.